You're listening to All In. This is the podcast dedicated to helping you fulfill the mission of God in your life and around the world. I'm your host, Jeff Wilker. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of All In. This week I'm taking you to Liberec in the Czech Republic with Foursquare Missionaries Ken and Linda Stapleton. Ken and Linda, welcome to this week's episode.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Hi.
Hey, tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing there in the Czech Republic.
Well, a current definition of our workload is kind of in transition from what it has been over the years. We've been here for 17 years and seen quite a change in the kingdom and the necessities of kingdom work here. So currently, we're in the process of working with a church plant, part of the preaching and teaching team, as well as conducting neighborhood outreach on a weeknight. But we're working really almost on a weekly basis. In fact, on a daily rotation, 4 different communities. So we're away from home 4 days a week, and then we spend our weekends in fellowship with our local church and preparation and laundry on the weekend.
And sometimes some outreaches, weekend outreaches with churches farther away.
Okay. Now, tell me, how did you end up in the Czech Republic?
Well, Linda and I don't agree about that. I keep telling everybody that it was a mistake, and she keeps telling me it was God's will. But for over 20 years, we had this sense, a very strong sense, that we'd heard God say that we would eventually be involved in foreign missions. And because of our fluency in the Spanish language and family relationships in South America and extensive traveling in primarily Mexico and Central America, we always thought that we were called to Latin America as missionaries. However, serving as an assistant pastor in a Seattle church, one of my responsibilities was recruiting, training, and sending out short-term mission teams. And our church got an invitation to come to the Czech Republic one summer. And Linda and I stepped in to lead that team. And it was one of those kind of an epiphany moment of wow, this is really an exciting place to be and an exciting and open area to work and all those sorts of things. So we continued for a period of 4 summers to bring teams back to serve in this country. On the second year...
Short-term mission.
Short-term,
right.
Yeah,
we never thought we'd come here full-time, but we started out short-term missions.
Okay.
And our as a family or as a couple, our focus was getting other people interested. So we were leading them. But on the second year that we were here, our team was divided on 2 different ends of a city. Linda was with one group, I was in another. And one afternoon, both of us heard quite audibly a question from God. Why are you making this a part-time call rather than coming and serving full-time in this nation? And when we got back together in the evening, neither one of us really knew how to start that conversation. We didn't know for sure, had we heard this or was this just some bad goulash that we got into. But ultimately the conversation started, and I said one thing, and she said, hey, I heard that. And, just over a series of another 2 years of preparation and prayer, we ended up in the Czech Republic rather than Latin America. And that was 17 plus years ago, so I guess we heard God right.
Yeah, I think so.
It certainly was not our original intention to even consider anything in Central Europe.
Yeah, we did short-term teams in 1994, 95, 96, and 97, and then moved here full-time in December of 1997.
Okay.
And we've been here ever since.
Now, were you empty nesters at that time, kids or anything like that in the picture?
Well, that's a funny story. Our children were grown, fully grown, and they had each moved out of the house 3 times. They had moved back for the second time, and we said, okay, Dad and I have decided to be missionaries, and so we need to know if you want to rent the house from us or if we should sell it. And they said they wanted to rent it, and so then we moved to the Czech Republic, and we just never went back home.
We have a word for our family circumstance back then. We called ourselves an accordion family because we were going in and out and in and out. And yeah, Linda said that yes, our children agreed that they wanted to rent our house. I think I've collected about 6 months worth of rent in the last 17 years.
Yeah. You can edit that out, Jeff.
But we didn't have to, the good news is we didn't have to have a yard sale and liquidate everything.
Yeah, this is true. All of us, all parents know that story quite well, Ken. We would assume that, and you have not told us. It just seems to be par for the course.
Well, that was our family circumstance. 17 years.
Well, our daughter still lives in the house and rents it from us, and she's gotten a better job, so she's doing a better job of paying the rent. So we're very thankful.
That's great. That's great. Now you've been there for 17 years, and you're seeing God do some incredible things. I've had the privilege of being there with you, stayed in your home there, seen the work that you've done, and seen the way that the Czech people have opened their hearts to you and they love you like you're one of them. And as you know, that's not always an easy thing to happen when you cross borders and you go into a country, but you guys have served it well. So kudos to you. I really appreciate the way you guys are serving the Czech Republic and the purposes of God in that country.
Thank you. We just feel real blessed by God. He's given us a lot of great people to serve.
You know, there are a lot of things about both of you guys that I love and appreciate so much. Not the least of which we're from the same part of the world. It's interesting. Most of our missionaries serving in Europe, we all have roots in the Pacific Northwest. I don't know how that all happened, but I'm sure the plan of God is there somewhere. So you're good Seahawks fans, and we all experienced the devastation.
Yes, we were up until 4 o'clock in the morning watching the game.
Yes.
Watching the Super Bowl to the very bitter end.
Actually, we saw every game this season.
Oh, wow. Yes. You are really committed. And I was up, and I cherished every minute except the last one.
Yeah, right.
But
hey, it was a great game, though.
It was a good game.
They played their hearts out. They did a good job.
We're
proud of them.
Yeah, they did. So, I love the fact you're Seahawks fans. I love the fact you're from the Northwest, and what you're doing there I thoroughly enjoy. But the thing that I've grown the most to appreciate about you guys, is something I've learned from you, is how you cherish your partnership with your ministry partners, the people who pray for you and support you. It's something that I've always seen in you, the way you talk about them with such relish and delight. And I'd like to unpack that with you some and learn some from you and share with our listeners about this whole concept of your relationship with your partners, and as missionaries, how important it is to you not only to be sent to a people, but to be sent from a people. To have those partners that are praying with you, supporting you, not only financially, but in every way. Unpack that with me a little bit and tell me what you've learned, what you've experienced, and what it means to you to have that kind of partnership.
Well, we have been here for quite a long time, as we've said, and we've had an awful lot of newcomers and people who are looking towards deploying to the field ask us about that very question. And it's a difficult answer for us because the bottom line is that we've found that it's all God. And I'll try to explain it, but I'm not really sure it's going to be clear. As I told you, it's almost a 20-year process that Linda and I felt and knew that God was going to call us to the mission field. And that was a vision that we cast everywhere we went with everybody who would listen. They always knew that when we were involved in local ministry, that our focus was on the field, but we served faithfully on a local basis in 3 or 4 different local churches, and just in the 1970s, during the hippie era, there we had this wall poster that says "Bloom where you're planted," and that's the way we lived for 20 years prior to our deployment. Was wherever we were serving the need of the local body. We've been everywhere from nursery through elementary, Christian education, youth groups, young college groups, home groups, serving homeless on the street, serving in retirement homes. Linda was a Christian education director. I was a regional chaplain for Royal Rangers. I mean, whatever it was that God put before us on our plate, we partook of it with relish and served to the best of our ability, all the time letting people know that this was not what we felt like God had for us in the end. And so everybody that we touched knew we were headed to the field. And this is where it gets difficult. Linda and I have been sustained financially very well for the last 17 years, but we have never, ever asked anybody for $1. Wow. Everybody that has been our supporter has been with us because they asked if they could partner with us. And most of them, I would say probably 85% of our current supporters have been with us for 20 years, because they supported us during our short-term outreaches as well. And we have lost maybe 2 or 3 of our original supporters, and God has replaced them with the now adult children of some of our, long-term supporters.
Wow, that's incredible.
I don't know how to answer the question, how do you develop a base of support, because people came to ask us, can we be a part of your...
However, most of it, I'd say 80% of it, is based on personal relationship.
Exactly.
We've known these people for years, and they've known our heart, and they've known our service. And we're talking not just people in the church, but people we worked with that weren't even Christians, relatives,
Buddhists.
People that we ministered to, and then they disappeared, but then all of a sudden they heard we were on the mission field, and they said, how can we help? And they started supporting us. I mean, God just brought the support in, and it was people that we had a relationship with. And all during the years, we never focused on, hey, when we become missionaries, do something for us. But we served them, and when it came time, they served us. It was like casting your bread on the water, and then it multiplies and returns to you. Yeah. And it was all God. But it was a lifetime of developing relationships with people.
And the other thing is that when we communicate with the people that are praying for us, supporting us, encouraging us, we tell them, and we tell them with all honesty and truth, that we sit in our ministry field and pray that the things that are accomplished through us are credited to the account of the people who support us. Mm-hmm. There's a Bible verse, I think, in one of the books of Samuel about David having a campaign, and everybody and all of the warriors wanting to divide the spoils, and David's responses is that the people that supplied us deserve their share of the spoils. And it's the same way with everybody that stands behind us in prayer, encouragement, and financial support. It's our opinion that they deserve a share of the spoils. So when something fantastic happens here, we're careful to send testimony home back to those people and let them know that that's being deposited in their account, not ours. Yeah. We're simply the spearhead, the point of a sphere that's made up of people that never leave their home.
Mm-hmm.
And we also pray for our supporters. I really believe, I ask God to open up a window and bless our supporters. And we also believe that you cannot outgive God. And when people give to missions, they're giving to God, and God can bless them. And I say, okay, God, just open up the window and bless our supporters. And I believe that's why many of them have continued to support us for 17 years, because God blesses them and they're able to do it.
Well, and
when we had the international economic crisis, and the churches were letting off people, and we thought, wow, I wonder if we're going to survive. Not one person stopped supporting us through that economic crisis.
Wow,
that's God. That's a miracle. That's God.
That really is. The whole way that you've painted the picture is so unlike the common experience of our missionaries. But I think that what you're painting a picture of is what should be the biblical norm. As you were talking about the way that you pray for your supporters to, and you acknowledge the fact that this is credit to their account. That's the same thing Paul said. Remember, he was writing one of the letters in the New Testament, and he says, I thank you for your gift, not that I'm looking for your gift, but that I want something that will be for your credit, that you'll be rewarded for this.
And it's very true. We can say it's very true for our supporters. God just really, really blesses them.
Well, I don't know if this is something that comes from the secular world, but I'm reminded of the sign that you see as you enter the zoo, please don't feed the animals. And that's kind of a watchword for people on the field. Be very, very careful about becoming the supplier to the needs of people that you're trying to serve. We've been very, very careful not to become, make it people dependent on us in the field.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we have developed a reputation of being quite generous. Mm. So it's not like we're standing on the street corner tossing money at every trouble, but we are very, very selectively being as absolutely generous as possible. One example is that for the last probably decade, we've been taking a portion of all the money that our supporters sends us, and we're forwarding it to another missionary couple serving very, very poor Romani or Gypsy people in a very destitute portion of Slovakia. But they are not only planting churches among that culture, but they're translating the Bible into the Romani language. And so Linda and I have purpose to monthly and faithfully support them. And that's something that we do under a basket. That's not something that we tell everybody.
Right.
Our supporters know we do that. But it's just God has taught us over the last 45 years that He will continue the source of supply to people who are canals rather than dams. And so we try to give away as much as possible without developing dependencies. And so, generosity is, if you're looking for a hallmark of how we operate financially, that's it, is to be a conduit and as generous as possible without developing dependencies.
So, as I listened to you, there are several, I wrote down a couple of notes here to highlight. One was you were faithfully serving where you were planted, as you quoted the old hippie saying, bloom where you're planted. A lot of times potential missionaries are thinking, well, eventually I'll get to serve and eventually I'll get to... No, you've got to do it right now where you are, because the best indication of your future activity is your present activity.
If you haven't done it at home, chances are you won't be able to do it on the field.
Yeah, I think to augment or fill in the blanks on that is to say that I can't think of anything that Linda and I did while we were serving locally in the States that hasn't become ministry currency here on the field at some point over the last 17 years.
Oh, that's
whether or not it's cleaning the toilets in a church or arranging the chairs on Saturday night or mowing the lawn or changing diapers or serving the elderly and all of those things that we did that at the time we could have said, this is way beneath my dignity, are things that we have actually been called to serve on the field and use. And not only that, but our experiences have helped us train other people who have callings in those areas where they have no other place as a resource to turn to figure out how it's been done or how to do it.
Yeah. So serve faithfully, build relationships.
Yes.
Pray for your supporters, and live with generosity.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's it. And we don't go to sleep wondering where we're going to go to itinerate to augment what we're missing. We don't have that sense at all. We just know that God's going to be faithful, and it's His responsibility. Well, another cliche: if it's God's will, it's God's bill.
Yeah.
But you can't say that to somebody that doesn't get it, because it's just, that's what it is. It's a cliche. But if you really understand that principle, it functions.
Now, have you both always felt this way, or is this something that you've had to grow into as you've been on the field?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because we were just discussing tithing just this week. And we know that we have been a tither since day one of being Christians. However, it's not a law. We don't do it because it's a law. We do it because God gave us a challenge. He said, try it and see if it works. Test me and see. And we tried it, and we found out it worked. You cannot outgive God. And we learned it early. And we always lived under this thing, well, we can give and God will give back. We can give and God will give back. And we didn't do it to get, but we did it because this is what God put in front of us. And so we did it, or we gave it. And then He blesses you with more and more. You just can't outgive Him. And we learned the principle early in life. And when we started out as Christians, we were very poor college students, hardly had enough money to get through the month. And it was really difficult to tithe, but we did it. And God was faithful. We got through the month. When my husband got a trucking job and he was now making enough money that our tithe was equal to what we earned in a month as poor people, and we had to give that amount as a tithe. If I hadn't been giving on the little things, I wouldn't have been able to give on the big things. So you don't wait to tithe.
Yeah. You
start where you're at, and as your income increases, your giving increases.
If we did have the video turned on, you'd see that I've never missed a meal.
But yeah, you just have to follow God's principles, and He changes you from glory to glory.
It's a step of faith.
It actually gets easier because you see how faithful God is. You test Him and find out how faithful He is, and I think your life with Him gets easier and easier.
Yeah, you do learn of His faithfulness, don't you? It's like David said, I was once young and now I'm old, and I've never seen the righteous forsaken or his seed begging for bread.
Yeah.
There's a faithfulness that longevity reveals to you, that you look back and you say, in all of these things, He was more than faithful.
That's right.
So if you were to sit down with a missionary couple or a potential missionary couple, what advice would you give to them in this regard?
Well, the first thing, I've been asked this question before by many people who come up to me after a missions conference or, a weekend retreat having to do with missions. We've done that. And my first response has always been, if you're in debt, get out. If you're not in debt, stay out. Because as soon as you start taking on debt, the enemy has a hook in you. The world has a hook in you. And it's very, very difficult to answer God's call when you've got those kind of responsibilities tying you down. So that's not a topic that we've actually covered here, but it's a topic that we were instructed, and I don't know whether it was by some godly individual or by God's word, but we have never been in debt. And looking back, I know that had we entered into debt, we wouldn't be where we are today, having served 17 years in a place where God has planted us. Mm-hmm. So that's number one thing that I tell anybody and everybody that asks me when they want to start preparing for missions: avoid debt at all costs. The second thing is start casting your vision and tell everybody that will listen to you, and then stand in front of them and serve faithfully wherever you are and whatever you're called to do, because it's going to establish your reputation among the faithful, and it's going to train you and give you ministry currency for wherever it is you're called to serve.
That is great advice. Linda, anything you'd like to add to that?
The one thing that I'd like to add is make sure you know that this is God calling you. You have to be sure of God's call, because the mission field is so difficult, because you're leaving the people you love, the places you love, and you're going to a place that it's foreign. It's called foreign missions for a reason.
Yeah.
And you will be challenged. You'll be challenged to, did God really call me here? You must know that God called you there. And then it'll give you the ability to stick with it, because you will be challenged.
And if you don't know it's God's will, you'll come out looking like a piece of hamburger.
Yeah. It will
just be sure that it's God's will that called you there and not something else or someone else. It's got to be God.
Yeah. This is a question I ask of all my guests. If we had a time machine and we were able to go back in time and sit down with a 25-year-old Ken and Linda, what advice would you give yourself?
Well, probably I would almost repeat what Linda has just said, but I would use maybe a different angle on that. I would tell them, when you get old, your mind starts to wander and you forget what you're going to say. Oh my goodness.
You just forgot what you were going to say.
I did. So it's Linda's turn. Find a mate that'll cover for you.
Yes, this is true. Very good advice to any young man.
We were 22 when we started tithing, and I don't think Ken had gotten his trucking business yet, so I would say just be faithful in tithing, not because it's a law, but because it's a principle that God honors. Be faithful in whatever he calls you to do it. Don't be afraid. A lot of times I was afraid to take the next step, but you don't have to be afraid. Once you see God working in your life over a number of years, then it's a little easier to trust him, but just trust him. He knows what he's doing. He has a plan for you, and he loves you.
Good advice. Good advice.
Okay, I'm ready.
Go ahead, Ken.
Be certain that you have the capacity to rely on God for all things.
Okay.
And again, it's going to be difficult to explain to somebody that hasn't experienced this, but when you get on the field, it's a very, very lonely place, and a very, very, Linda's already used the term foreign. Everything about your new home is going to be completely different from what you're used to. The way that they measure lunch meat it's not ounces, it's grams. The way they sell water is, milliliters rather than ounces. And I mean, everything is, the details of life are going to be so difficult that there will be days where you don't even want to get out of bed because life is way too hard and you don't want to face it. And that's the time that you need to have already established that you can rely on God to sustain you.
Yeah.
Because if you can't do that, if you haven't learned that principle, it's like it is so burdensome that there really and truly will be days that you don't want to get out of bed, because getting out of bed and facing the world will be far more difficult than it's worth. Mm-hmm. I would rather go hungry than have to go to the store and buy salami, because I don't know how many grams it takes to make a sandwich. Little details.
Yeah.
But life will just swallow you if you haven't learned how to rely on God for everything.
Good advice. Good advice. Well, if somebody out there listening wants to connect with you, what's the best way that they can do that?
Well,
Gmail.
Yeah, Gmail. Our Gmail account is always available. We're checking it as often as we can get online.
czmates@gmail.com.
We also both have Facebook accounts, so we try to stay communicative with people.
Ken more than me.
And beyond that, we actually have a Facebook page for our ministry.
Okay.
And you probably could find it. I've never actually done this, but my guess is that if you searched for Checkmates, one word, CZECHMATES, you'll find a Facebook page that is specifically news blurbs and photos from our field.
Okay.
And also we have 4 videos that were made by Creative Impact Ministries that you can find on YouTube. If you look under Ken Stapleton, and there's more than one, look at the guy who's the handsome guy who's in the black short sleeve t-shirt.
Okay.
That Ken Stapleton, you can see 4 videos. And one is a half hour long, and it details everything we've done in the last 17 years. It's quite good.
Great.
And you can hear what the Czechs think about us, because they interviewed many Czechs.
Yeah, I've seen that video. It's wonderful. Well, I'll include links in the show notes for all of this as well. So people listening, if they just want to go to the to jeffroper.com to the show notes for this, they'll be able to click on the link and have access to all of this, your email address, Facebook, all of that. Well, Ken and Linda.
And you also know that we have the Give page on FMI, which they're, I think, in the process of renovating as we speak.
Yep.
They can always do that.
Yeah. So we'll include links to that as well, in case you have people out there that would feel led by the Spirit to partner with you or communicate with you in any way. Well, Ken and Linda, it's been a joy to have you with us on this week's episode of All In. Anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we end this up?
Yes. One of our themes has been to pastors is to duplicate themselves and bring up the next generation of ministers. We would like to duplicate ourselves as missionaries in the Czech Republic. So anyone who has a heart and a calling to the Czech Republic, they could maybe be an intern. They could be here for 3 months as an intern and see if this is really God's will for them. And we want to encourage someone else to come and serve the Czech people.
Yeah, we just made arrangements for our second intern to be arriving early next year. Also, we've got a lot of service projects. If churches want to put together teams to do, renovation, painting, those types of service projects, we've got a lot of work to be done. So they can contact us through the links that you're going to be providing, and we can tell them what sort of teams we're hoping to find in the next few months.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we'll be sure to include all of that. Well, thanks, guys, for being with us. It's been a joy and a delight.
Thank you, Jeff, for calling. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Well, we're done now. Thanks for listening. This is Jeff Roper reminding you that the mission of God is too grand for mediocrity or average living. You were created for a purpose, and that purpose is found in the mission of God. It's your life. Now go live it.